Hey, hey. We're back again. Please take your seat. We're back again with another session from Sven, who is a DevOps advocate from Atlassian. If you use Jira and you have complaints, you know who to ask. I'm just saying. But this session is going to be about developer joy and how team can increase their velocity and improve their experience. The stage is yours, Sven.
All right, thank you very much, and welcome. First, it's called Jira, not Jira. I can tell you no worries. I can tell you the story over beer later at the party if you want, why it's called Jira. But you might think like, why is this guy, the Sven Peters from Atlassian, coming to JFocus and talk about developer joy, right? We have the best jobs in the world, right? We just like enjoy what we do. We create stuff for the customers. We are really just like can do stuff with our hands that the customers can use and we create value. So why the hell is this guy from Atlassian here to talk about developer joy? And you will see why. In the last 10 years, software development has changed a lot. So we have been through some tremendous changes how we these days develop software. So first thing is, of course, we develop now for the cloud, distributed systems, all those things, right? We are now just like we had to learn new cloud technologies, how that works, which tools we can use, which libraries are available. Now we just like putting together libraries for the cloud in AWS or whatever. So it has changed dramatically. Then now we're running everything on little small containers, right? We have little containers and we need to just like do observability with the containers. We need to just like see what's happening with these containers. Are they still up? Are they down? Whatever, right? Logging is done differently now. My first container that I spun up, I just like, it went down and so I wanted to see the log files and obviously the log files weren't there anymore, so I had to learn that. So it's working so super differently and also microservices change the way we work. Now we have to take care about just like, is this microservice on the other side that I'm calling available? What's happening if the API changes, right? What should I do? What is all this happening? What is this microservice actually doing that I'm using, right? And where can I find it? Where can I find more information about it? And then security and governance. Now that everything is in the cloud, publicly available, like we need to just like take care about that too. Which hasn't been done before. So we need to also think about security and governance. And then you heard about it when a Fogel said it, I think almost 20 years ago. You build it, you run it. Now we are also, as software developers, not responsible for just like programming and doing the software. Now we're also responsible for running it and just like do something. If something is with the software, if the microservice is down or something odd happens to the microservice, we got called. We have to just like be on duty. So all these things have been put on what we just like have done 10 years ago. Just like it's just like putting on. And of course, this all leads to more cognitive load for developers. There's more things in our heads. There's more things to do. It's not just like writing software. It's a lot of other things too. Now, with this cognitive load, actually our managers say, yeah, this is all good. It's great because now you're responsible for the thing, right, that you're building. It's all good. It's great. But can we get the productivity back, right? And I'm talking to a lot of CTOs these days that say, Sven, just like, how do you measure the productivity of my developer? How do I just like measure it and make them more productive? And I said, you know what? This is the wrong question to ask, right? This is just like super wrong question. And I just like was thinking about where does this productivity obsession come from? Why is everyone just like, oh, let's make the developers more productive, right? They carve out less features, so let's make them more productive so they can actually develop more features. How do we do that, right? So to just like go to the bottom of productivity where it's all started, I want to take you on a time travel. Is that okay? Are you fine? Just like traveling back in time? Okay, so we're traveling 126 years back in time. I'll count to 3, and then we're back in time. 1, 2, 3. Here we are. The year is 1898. We are in the Bethlehem Steel Factory. And the Bethlehem Steel Factory had some productivity issues. So remember, at that time, there was no Boston consulting group to call and say, hey, fix our productivity stuff, or McKinsey didn't exist at that time. So what they did is actually they hired one person, and the person was called Frederick Winslow Taylor. Some people might have heard of Frederick Winslow Taylor. He's famous for his Taylorism. And they called him and said, okay, please fix our productivity issues that we have in our factory. So Frederick Winslow Taylor came in and said, okay, the first thing that I do is just observe. So I'm taking out my stopwatch and measure how long certain tasks will take, right? So just like out stopwatch, just like saw what the workers were doing. And the first thing that he actually noticed was that the workers were using just like normal shuffles to shuffle the coal. Normal shuffles were they were used just like to just like dig in soil or whatever. And he said, okay, this is just like stupid because coal is falling left and right of the shuffles. So we give them custom-made shuffles. And guess what? They could shuffle the double amount of coal with a custom-made shuffle. So just like productivity gain there by better tooling, great. But then he also looked how much the workers could carry throughout the day. And obviously, in the morning, they could carry a lot, and then in the evening, they get exhausted, of course, yeah, by carrying the whole day stuff around the factory floor. They could carry less. So what he actually did is he was giving the workers more breaks in between, right? So give them more breaks. So throughout the day, he had just like actually, if you sum it up, the workers could carry more than just like carrying a lot in the morning and less in the evening. So also here, productivity gain, great, by giving the workers more pauses, right? But he did a lot of other stuff, right? Optimizing the ways in the factory where things were. So a lot of things. So all in all, he increased the productivity of the factory workers by 400%. Yeah, this is also what we want with developers, right? Just like 400% increase. But hey, everything comes with a flip side, right? Also this, right, the productivity gain comes now that workers are actually doing now repetitive tasks. Everything is just like stopwatch, everything is just like figured out. But the managers were supposed to think, because the workers didn't have time to think about how to optimize things, but the workers were supposed to think, right? So I guarantee you we travel actually back in a sec. This is 126 years ago, right? Factory work is different than software development, I know, right? But somehow still people think about productivity as optimizing a factory, right? So how do we actually measure the productivity, right? We can't stand there with a stopwatch. So how do we actually measure the productivity of developers? So my first manager that I had back in 2000, he said, okay, Sven, we count the lines of code you added. And we know this is just like a bad metric, right? It doesn't tell anything about productivity. Counting the lines of code doesn't make any sense for just like measuring the productivity, right? But hey, this was the only measure that we had at that time. So just like, yeah, we added, I don't know, 10,000 more lines of code in the last quarter. Great work, yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with productivity. Then we counted the issues that moved into the done column. Well, okay, maybe that's better, right? We can count how many tasks we did, right? But then the issues there are just like smaller issues that take shorter time, and then there are bigger issues that take longer time. So also this is not a good measurement for productivity. Now you might say, but hey, we have this story points, right? So why don't we count the story points, right? Story points are just an estimation. So we just like estimate before we do the task. It doesn't tell anything about productivity. It's just like an estimation that we do. We think just like, oh, this is a 5, and it turns out it's a 3, so productivity increases. Wow, great. Or make it easier with t-shirt sizes. This is an L. It turns out it's an XL, so it takes longer, productivity goes down. So it has nothing to do with measuring productivity. But now you heard probably about cycle time or deployment frequency. Yeah, all good measures, but you know what? If you give developers these measurements and say, now just like increase them, they will game the metrics. They know how to game the metrics. Deployment frequency, yeah, I just like do smaller deployments throughout the day. Great, we get more productive. Woohoo! But this is what managers do, right? They just like put pressure on developers and say, now be faster, now do more. thank you very much, Frederick Winslow Taylor, right? We're still in the Taylorism times, so we just like treat our software developers like factory workers. Now, but we are smarter than that, right? So you probably heard about the term developer experience, improving the developer experience. And don't get me wrong, I think this is great, right? And this is the right way to go. But there are also some consulting companies that take advantage of this developer experience hype and say, we can sell some certifications around that, right? So here's a framework for developer experience, how to improve it. So just like make the developer experience better, sell the course. Now you're a certified developer experience developer or something, I don't know. Or maybe you heard about this McKinsey stuff that they put out, how they measure productivity, developer productivity with story points again. Even though we know that story points is not a good measurement and it's a stupid framework to measuring productivity, everyone agreed with that. Sorry, McKinsey. So just to sum this up, what we do at Atlassian, we think just like, okay, let's go back to the roots where we all started, right? And this is actually when we enjoyed what we are doing, right? Back to developer joy, just to spark the flame again with developers that they enjoy what they're doing. Because guess what? If developers enjoy what they are doing, they're happy developers and they're also productive developers. So what is it now that makes developer joy? So the first thing is just like, if I work on great code, right? Great quality code, I super enjoy what I'm doing, right? It's just like, it's really great to work with that code, less technical depth, it's all good, right? So I enjoy that and enjoy that. Or if the ideas that I have on Monday morning I can implement on Thursday. So really the progress that we have as a team is just like flowing, right? So no dependencies. I don't have to wait for anyone. I can just like do my work. Great. So if progress is there, I'm super also enjoying what I'm doing. And the last thing is the value that I create, right? I just like want to do something so somebody can use that for good, right? The software that I built. So if I get this feedback from the customers and say, we love your software, it's really great, we love that feature that you just like built, we're really cool, I super enjoy what I'm doing. And guess what? If all these things come together, great quality, we're making good progress, and we're building the right thing for the customer, we are productive. Okay, great. So I brought some stories with me from teams at Atlassian that ran into problems and just like fixed them and improved their developer joy basically themselves. And I will start a little bit with quality. So how do you just like get the quality up as a team? Yeah, you probably know that you're doing code reviews, right? Everyone is doing code reviews here, right? Yeah? Good, great. Okay, cool. Just that we have this baseline here. But code reviews have also, so people somehow don't like really code reviews. Some people don't like code reviews because you're putting your code out there to everyone, right? And it's a hard thing to do, right? So for example here, right? Just like assume I've built this beautiful new class, or just like added these lines of code new, and then I just like put my pull request out there and say, hey, please now review the code, right? And someone says, okay, the first comment that I get is this here. What the fuck, Sven? Right. So, oh my God. I want to stop here, right? I just like, I close, but hey, I know we have to move on. So the next thing is just like say, okay, what's wrong here? This code is ugly. Boom, boo. Now I'm running and say no. I'm crying. No, but hey, I want to learn, right? So I just like ask, okay, code is ugly. It doesn't tell me anything. Please, just like, can you be a little bit more, like explain what you mean by that? And then the guy says, just like, it would be nicer if you'd use a for loop, right? Yeah, a while loop is super okay, but hey, tell me about it, like why it would be nicer. I need some more context around that. So actually advise if you are kind of tending to do these kind of comments on pull requests, don't be a jerk, right? Don't be a jerk, right? So actually, who has been bullied by a jerk in the last 2 months? You know, please don't raise your hands. I know your coworkers are in the room. It's fine, right? Okay, but we have a common understanding here, right? Anyway, so actually these people are the reason why people hate code reviews, because you put your code out there, you put yourself out there, and you get that feedback, and you just like want to avoid that. So the Jira team actually, they don't have jerks on their team, I think, but they actually wanted to avoid that problem, to having just like jerks on the team that could do some kind of comments here. So they were looking at it and say, okay, let's look at it, because as a reviewer, right, you are in this protected bubble. You can just like shoot and say, oh, this code looks ugly. And as an author of the code, you just like open yourself up. You open yourself up, your work up to the team, right? It's you open it up to the team, the whole team. So how can you just like make sure that people don't put their comments? So they put some rules in, or agreed on some rules. So for example, assume competence, right? So assume competence. So we actually do a lot of coding interviews. We hire the right people. So we hire the competent people. So assume that this person that wrote this code is competent, right? The next thing is be constructive in your feedback. This code looks ugly. Not really constructive, so be constructive in your feedback, and also explain your reasoning. Like a for loop would be nicer. Explain a little bit more why, because I want to learn too, right? I'm just like I want to learn from it. I love that's also a reason why I do code reviews, or just like put my code out there. I want to learn from people. So they put up this what they call the pull request submission and review etiquette. So they put this up, and then everyone can read through it. There's also some more rules in for the author, actually, that they review the code before they actually put a pull request in themselves. All the things. So this is their etiquette, but it helps them to say, okay, we don't want to make these comments. We agreed on some things, some rules here to just like make code reviews more pleasant, because we know actually code reviews are really necessary to not just like have great code quality, but also to learn from others and learn new areas of code. So this actually means no bullying, means more developer joy for that team. Now, let's go to another team here at Atlassian, and that's the Confluence team. So, of course, yeah, when you just like ready with your code review and you merge your code, your test kicks off, right? So your automated test, you just like run the test, and running the test, and sometimes it turns out the test turns red. Right? Okay, that's why we have tests, right? Nope, no problem. So we look at it and say, okay, we just like added these few lines of code, and the test is red. So let me just like look at the log files and then look at the code, what went wrong, what do I have to change. After 20 minutes, you say, I really don't know why actually this test failed. I have no idea. So what are you doing? Yeah, you just like press, okay, I rerun the tests, and boom, test is green. Wow, great. Okay, so we can move on. Great. Okay, was just a flaky test. No, it was a flaky test. Oh my God. So we have to do something about it. 18 minutes in, it's time for a short commercial. I'll be back after the break.
Is seeing red build after red build getting old? Is rerunning your failed jobs getting you down? Is waiting on those failed jobs to finish making you crazy? Deterministic Reliability is here to help. With our handy-dandy flaky test monitoring system, we will, eventually, automatically bypass those flaky tests. For 4 easy payments of free, you too can save time, ship quality code faster, be more productive, feel so much better when you go to work every day. You will be happier, your team will be happier, you'll stop dying inside, you'll stop banging your head against your desk, you'll stop replacing computers that are in a rage against the wall. Sorry, it's just a little close to home. Call 1-800-Atlassian today to get your free flake monitoring system.
Okay, so we haven't built a public flaky test detector, but the Confluence team actually has built a flaky test detector. Put this video out to share that they have built it with everyone at Atlassian, so everyone can actually use it. So flaky test detector, pretty simple actually. So once you create the pull request, test kicks off, right? Test fails. And then that's where the flaky test detector kicks in and says, okay, let me try to rerun that 3 or 4 more times. Rerun the test passes, boom, we have detected the flaky test. What the flaky test detector then does is just like marks the test as skip tests because it's flaky, and then adds also, because it has to be fixed somehow, and maybe also the code is flaky, who knows, right? It has to also add a comment to the pull request that someone has to look at it, and also, yeah, it gives a Slack message in the Slack room, so the team just like is aware that there's a flaky test, and they have to do something about it, right? So all in all, just like there's less debug frustration, not moving into just like the whole like what happened. I don't know. The flaky test detector does that automatically for you, and it means more developer joy because you can move on faster. I think once the one team just like released the numbers and they said they saved, I don't know, 90 hours of developer time with just in a quarter, so with a flaky test detector. But it's not just about quality, it's all about getting in the flow, right? We know that as software developers, we love to be, I love to be in the flow, and if it's just like, I'm so in the problem and then it's getting dark outside, I feel super productive then. So being in the flow is something that we really admire and we really want to have. But unfortunately, software development is not just about writing code. There's more in this software development pipeline. There's also build and test phase and the deploy phase, and we can actually cut that down, build and test. Yeah, we just like parallelize the tests, so we can just like cut down the time or deployment. We have small little microservices and just like deploy single microservices. All good, right? We can optimize that time by looking at the toolings and how we use this software. But there's one thing in there that takes a lot of time, and that is the reviews, right? The reviews. It can take days until someone reviewed my code and I can finally merge it back, right? But what you want is actually to move forward faster. So the Confluence team actually had that problem, and they were measuring actually how long it takes from opening up a pull request to merging it back to the main branch. In average, they measured 3 days, which is maybe an okay number there, but they just like said they want to improve it because it means it's like 3 days waiting that our customer can't use the new feature, and it also means just like after 3 days, you have to go back to work that you have done 3 days ago and remember what you were doing. So not very effective, right? So we agreed that we cut down that time. Actually, we didn't agree, so it was one team lead at Atlassian. So we have this open pull request with some reviewers attached to that. So this team lead, his name is Punit Arora. So Punit did the following. In the morning, he got up early and messaged everyone through Slack saying, can you please, there's an open pull request with your name attached as a reviewer. Can you please go in first thing in the morning and review that pull request so your coworkers can go on and merge it back into the code base so we can move on and the customer is happy because they get the feature earlier, right? So it is not that people didn't want to review. They just like got a notification during the day, forgot about it, and then just like moved on, right? And were probably in the flow or whatever. So that was super popular. So people really liked that and said, okay, great, Punit, that you're doing that. But hey, it's not your job, right, to ping us. So they removed Punit with a bot, and they called it the Punit bot. And now the Punit bot is doing the same thing in the morning, just like looked at the open pull request and also some ping everyone in the morning. So it helps the team, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but it helped them for a certain time to just like be aware that they had to look at the pull requests, right? They have to actually look at the pull request and review those. So. But the results were in, just like they went from 3 days to 1.2 days. They changed a bunch of other things. So they learned along the way that, yeah, maybe we just like, when someone opened a pull request, says, oh my God, there are so many changes, I will just like not do it today, I will do it tomorrow. So they learned that they have to make smaller pull requests. All the things just like led to the 1.2 days, but it was all about just like being aware that we want to cut down the pull request time down. And also this means just like, improving the developer joy because you have less wait time for merging your code back into the main branch. Well, flow is so important, and I'm just like obsessed with flow. Flow is so important, and if you compare workflow that flows through some systems, your work that has to go through some stages, I compare that to traffic, right? So traffic needs also to flow, right? And sometimes it sucks, sometimes we have to wait. So I'm comparing now workflow to traffic flow. So I have like some simulations of junctions. So for example, this junction here has no rules, right? It's just like totally chaotic. And the simulation says that 191 cars can pass the junction in a minute. So think about it, just like no rules, no processes, nothing. We just like do our work and try to just like figure things out on the fly, right? This would be like this. Now, let's add some rules and some little bit heavy rules. So for traffic, it would be just like, let's add some traffic lights to this junction. And you can see, wow, the cars can go full speed, but on the other hand, some cars are just like stopping and waiting until the traffic light went green for them, and then they can go full speed. So, but traffic flow actually increases compared to this chaotic flow with 235 cars per minute. But we don't want to have processes, actually, too many processes where we just like get stuck and need to wait, right? We learned it. We are actually are more agile. So comparing that to traffic would be just like a roundabout, right? So a feature gets slotted in whenever there's time. When the design team has time, they slot the design in. So this is a roundabout, and actually cars are not slowing down that much. So traffic flow is around 360. So that's what the simulation says. Great. So this is a proof that Agile probably works and makes us more effective, right? Good. Okay, that's a great team flow. But wait, there's one more thing. It's called the stack interchange. And the stack interchange, even though the setup looks a little bit crazy, right? But if you look at the cars, they don't stop at all, right? They don't even slow down. They just like merge the lane automatically, just like without stopping down, just like find their spot magically in the next lane, right? And traffic flow is actually 1,099 cars. So this is actually what we want, right? What does that mean for work, right? It means that we don't have to rely on other cars or teams, right? It means that we can run autonomously without stopping. So we don't have to wait for processes, for other teams to get an approval or whatever. We do everything autonomously, right? We are our own team that that can run everything through. Of course, we need to be aligned with the other teams in large organizations. But what does that mean that we run autonomously? So what do we need if we want to run autonomously? Well, I probably need a designer on the team, right, that makes my design, maybe a QA person that do all the tests, and then the ops person that helps me running the software, right? Probably there's also a product manager involved or whatever. So if I have everyone on the team available in that time that I need them, just like then I can run really autonomously. Sounds a little bit like fairy tale, right? Or fairyland or whatever. It's like fantasy land. It never happened. I've never seen that actually working. And also the Trello team thought about that and said, we really want to have, because QA is just like slowing us down, we want to have QA engineers on the team so they are available whenever the feature is ready to test. Well, it turns out that we don't have enough QA engineers at Atlassian, right? So the ratio is 1 to 30, right? So one QA engineer, 30 developers. So that doesn't really work to get that on a team. We don't have teams with 30 developers, right? That doesn't really work. So instead, right, if you look at it, the developers were doing the automated tests, and the QA person were doing more the exploratory tests. So they were just like responsible for the exploratory tests. So what they did is actually they said, okay, developers now also have to do the exploratory test, and we call QA quality assistance instead of quality assurance. So now they are make assistance for the developers to test the code, right? To make the exploratory or the manual tests. How does that work? So they do something they call QA kickoffs. So during a QA kickoff, it's actually before the developer starts developing the feature, they go in together and look at the user story, look at the description and say, okay, how would we test that feature when it's ready? So they go in and write the test plan. This is actually before they develop the feature. So they write together a test plan, and it goes so far that actually the developer writes a test plan on their own and just like send it over to the QA engineer after a while when you learn a little bit about just like how to be better tester. And then the developer goes in, do the implementation, do the testing on their own, make a demo, and maybe the QA person can take part of the demo and look at it and say, have you tested this? But doesn't have to be. And then we can deploy it without actually any interaction anymore with the QA. So that way, we actually remove the QA bottleneck in the middle of the development. It's like, just like as a stopper for the deployment, and have put the QA person at the beginning of the software development. So that means less dependencies, right? We have less dependencies with other teams and less wait time and more developer joy because I can move forward fast. Now, let's talk a little bit about other people that we need for building software, the product managers, right? And if you look like this, we sometimes don't speak actually the same language. It feels like product people living on another planet than developers, right? But we have somehow to work together. So here's a short story that I actually experienced with a product manager that said, okay, Sven, here's a user story you have to implement. It says, as a user, I want to export the user data actually, so I can have it in an Excel file. I said, oh, wow. It's pretty easy, right? I put a button on here and just like export an Excel file. So I did that, gave it to the product manager, says, here, it's done. And the product manager came back and says, now that I look at the Excel file, there's so much other information in there. When did we create the user, blah, blah, blah. I just need the important data. And said, yeah, you should have told me, but hey, okay, I can remove a couple of columns. That's no problem. Let's do that. So the next user story is, as a user, I want to export the data, the important data, right? So can have it in an Excel file. Did that, gave it to the product manager and say, hey, what do you think? Here's the piece of software that you wanted. Said, yeah, it's now the important data is in there. But I figured out I didn't know there's a difference between Excel and CSV. So I actually need that in a CSV file. All right, okay, good. Good, I'm doing that. So giving it in a CSV file, great. And then the product manager says, brilliant, great. Now the user can actually take that CSV file and import it in the CRM system. Great, good work. Say, oh, what? You want to import it back in the CRM system? The CRM system has an API. We could shuffle the data over just like automatically. We don't need an import-export. It's just like stupid, right? Why didn't you tell me? So this is really the frustrating moment when you find out, oh, we probably should have talked a little bit more. I shouldn't just like relied on this user story that you put into Jira. But yeah, so if you look at it, I don't want to just like blame the product people. Also, I'll blame the developers, right? So product people do a lot of great jobs. Like they do a lot of research, then they do some measurements, they talk to customers, do some interviews, experiments, prototypes, until they just like figured out this is the perfect user story, and the developers just have to implement that. And then as a developer, you just like read the user story, but you don't have the background information, so you develop maybe not the right thing because you don't have the whole context, right? So the Jira team actually had that problem for a while. There's tension between product people and developers. So they just like thought about just like how can we get these two roles, two planets a little bit closer together. So the developers understand more what the product people are doing, and the product people understand more how development is done and what the developers are doing. So, and they looked at it in a little bit in phases. So they thought, okay, the development is the make phase where we really create the software. And we are, as product people, more in the wonder phase, which is just like figuring out what is the real problem. But there are more phases to that. There's also the explore phase. Once the problem is identified, it's just a problem. Then we just like need to see which solution are actually trying to solve that problem. I know a lot of people are just like jumping right to the explore phase and says, I have the solution, you need a button, you need to that, but we need the problem. We need to know the problem first, right? And the problem is that people want to have the data in the CRM system that is in another system. So we need to just like copy that over. Not the problem is not I need an Excel file. So explore phase, and then we have the impact phase also, just like how much impact did we generate? Did we just like reach our goal with that feature that we were building, right? The measuring, the feedback from the users. So don't get me wrong, not all developers should be just like involved in every phase, right? We are probably as developers more involved in the make phase still, and less in the wonder phase. That's still, but we need to be informed what's happening there. And also the product people are more involved, of course, in the wonder phase than in the make phase. But they also need to know what are the developers doing. So how do we now sync those different roles? So we actually defined some workshops where we just like come together and just like talk about these things. So one is a project kickoff. Once the product people have defined the problem, they're doing a project kickoff with everyone involved. The QA people, the designers, the IT people, the developers. So everyone just like gets in the room and just like we're doing a QA kickoff. So we're doing a project kickoff to just learn more about what's coming, maybe in 1, maybe in 2 months, maybe in half a year. So we know what's coming, right? And then we're building prototypes. And it's not just that the product people build nice Figma prototypes. We also need to build prototypes and see is that technically feasible? Can we do that? So also developers are heavily involved in prototyping. And then during the make phase, the developers are doing regular demos to show the progress of the development. So everyone is involved and can get feedback immediately. I would just like jump into that a little bit in a second. And then at the end, we just like look at the numbers and feed that back and see if we need to improve something instead of just like jumping right into the next project. We need to just like make sure that we build the right thing for the customers. So I was talking about just like, because most developers are in the room, talk about the demos, how we run the demos. So this picture is a little bit misleading because we're not doing this in person anymore. We're doing this normally through Zoom calls that gets recorded so everyone can see that. We're a distributed team all over the world, so we need to make sure that everyone can just like can watch that. So a demo is actually something that is happening every week. Some teams does it every 2 weeks, but normally it happens every week, and it's open, so everyone can join. Everyone can just like come in and watch the progress of the development, and it's outcome oriented. So we just like focused primarily on the outcome, not implementation details, nothing. It's just like, what is the customer value that we created in the last week? And then it's an open forum. So people discuss and challenge the solution. Sometimes it happens that the product managers come in and say, oh, now that we see that, how that works and the limitation, let us take that back to the customer and just like see how the reaction is before we actually deploy it to the customer. The customer comes back and they said, this is not the right thing to do. We just like still early in the process, that change is not so expensive. And then also, once we're sitting together in one room, why don't we celebrate milestones, right? We deployed it to a subset of users, great, and they loving it, cool. Just like sitting together and celebrate. We do that way too less. So all these things just like happening to involving everyone in the whole like software development life cycle is just like less rework frustration. We get a better understanding what we're building. We build the right thing for the customer, and it means actually more developer joy at the end, right? Great stories, I know, but now Frederick Fringsor Taylor comes in and says, now what, right? How productive have you been with just like a Punit bot? How much more productive have you been, right? What does that mean, right? I say, I don't know. We feel better. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're pretty convinced that it's the right thing to do. Yeah, and Peter Drucker said it. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And we want to improve the productivity. So if you just like want to start with measuring something, you might want to start with the DORA metrics. It's a proven thing that it shows you that you're just like moving forward. So things like change failure rate, time to restore if you develop a distributed architecture. The DORA metrics are probably, there's just like table stakes that these helps. But don't take them just like, okay, we just like apply the DORA metrics and we are done. Because every team is different. I mean, think about it. If you're just like developing mobile software, deployment frequency is not a good measurement, right? You don't want to just like deploy 10 times a day to the App Store. That doesn't make really sense. So look at this. What is the problem in your team? What does your team, what was the problem that you face in your team? And it might be you're really good at you're not interested in change failure rate because you're really good at that already. It's like the quality is high, it's great. So look at what is the problem, what is important actually for your team. So just like look at that. And then just like measure these things that you just like identify. Just like take 2-3 measurements, not too much, and try to improve those. So we use actually Compass, which is an Atlassian tool, just went GA, I think, in October. So just like see per microservice, what are the metrics per microservice. And we also establish baselines. So we can see if something drops, we just like get an alert and see just like, oh, needs some attention, so we need to look at that and just like look at the things. But also, sometimes it actually happens that, yeah, deployment frequency drops because actually we're working on a very complicated part of the subsystem somewhere, and we haven't deployed, but that's okay, right? It's not a productivity issue, really, because it's okay. We know it will drop, right? So take those metrics, but don't just like take them just like religiously and say, oh, we need to improve that, right? So what we do weekly meetings. So it's a ritual that we do. We call it check-ups, and we do a meeting and talk about those metrics and see what alerts came in, what has been happening during the week, what can we do to improve things, to just like constantly think about improving our craft. And we also have built in the checkups ritual into Compass so people can do that. But here's the thing, right? GitHub did an interesting experiment. What they did is they just like asked the developers, how productive did you feel today, right? How productive did you feel today? So and some days you just like, the developers felt productive and other days, less productive, right? That's just like super normal. But then they correlated that actually with some data. So seeing just like how many check-ins did they do, right? How many pull requests did they open? How many pull request comments did they write? And you know what? The activities that they saw didn't correlate with the feelings that the developer had at all. So can we really measure productivity? I don't know. Poor Octocat here. But it is because we're falling all the time back to this Frederick Winslow Taylor thinking of, yeah, we need to optimize these things, right? How can we make the idea phase shorter? How can we make the review phase shorter, right? But guess what? Software development is not a production line. So we don't produce the same piece of software over and over again. Right? We just like software development is a creative job, right? And sometimes it takes longer because we're doing things that no one has done before. So we just like inventing every day, right? So measure what's important, but don't make important what you can measure, right? Just like look at this and just like think about it what you want to measure, and don't take just like, oh, there's a global measurement and we need to follow that. That's just like, that doesn't lead you to anything better at least. And also, don't forget, you have intelligent developers that obviously know actually what's wrong in their software development lifecycle, what needs to be improved, what bothers them the most. So also ask your developers. It's just like way cheaper than trying to just like measure it, have a metrics, and then have a 90 days window, sliding window, and implementing all of this, right? It's much better just like to ask your developers. They probably have the answer, right? So we are running these developer surveys. We call them developer joy surveys, where we ask specific questions, how satisfied our developers are. So we ask, how satisfied are you with your speed to ship quality code? How satisfied are you with your waiting time, waiting on other teams, execution independence, right? Are you feeling like you can execute independently? How satisfied are you with that? Your access to tools, practices, and processes. Are you satisfied with that? Effort with managing external standards like security and governance, managing your code and your pipeline, your whole infrastructure. Are you really satisfied with that? How about the ramp-up time if you get new developers on board? Is that okay? So we developed the survey, and it's Atlassian specific a little bit. But I want you to do, right? Can you just please scan the QR code and tell me what from these 8 things are your developer joy challenge, your biggest challenge at your workplace? So is it speed to ship quality code? Is that a challenge for you? Is that the wait time? Is that the execution independence, that you can execute things independently, or your access to tools, processes, practices? Effort of managing security and governance, managing your code pipeline and infrastructure. Does that take too much time, or are you satisfied with it? Your ramp up time, right? So what's your biggest challenge? So let's take a look. Here we are. So live results coming in, and it looks like most of you are struggling with wait time. That's also what I see a lot at conferences. So wait time is probably also the number one thing. And then managing your code pipeline and infrastructure. Developer satisfaction, overall satisfaction seems also to be not okay. All right, good. Well, great. Thanks for that. Just like a live poll here. So, but we're not just asking, are you satisfied with that? We're also asking, right, because we are asking a lot of teams, right? Is that actually relevant for your team? Is that important? And out of these 2 values, we're calculating a so-called opportunity score. And then we can see if you're just like in the white corridor, it seems to be that is okay, right? Satisfaction is high, and importance is also high. If you're falling below this white corridor, importance is high, satisfaction is low, you need to do something. If you're just like on the other side of it, just like high satisfaction but low importance, maybe you want to change that. It's not necessary for you to track it anymore. Maybe you want to change that out in the next developer experience survey. But this is how and we give this results to the teams so they can actually fix their developer joy themselves. If you want to learn more about that, we have written a so-called play in our playbook about how to do this developer survey. It's free, so just go there and try it out yourself. So when we got this values in, we just say, okay, now go out and try to fix some things. You get 10% of your development time for just improving your developer joy. This is what we give our developers. But then at the same time, you want to spread the learnings, right? You also want to just spread things out. If it works for one team, it probably works for more teams. Even though every team is different. But the Punit board is a good example, right? Where it works for one team, but it could also work for just more teams. So what the Punit team did is actually, they wrote a blog post. So we're blogging heavily at Atlassian internally. So they wrote a blog post about the Punit board and say, okay, the Punit board is born now. This is how it works. This is how you can use that. And now there are around 20 to 30 teams that are actually using the Punit board in their software development, making them more aware on shortening the pull request time. But to sum this up, just take these measurements. They show you some signals. They show you definitely some signals where you can just look after if you take the right measurements. But take also survey results. Ask your software developers. Give that to your autonomous teams that are just have the autonomy to carve out time to try new things. So give them also time to try to fix things on their own, and let them fix their developer quality, their progress, how fast they can run, and the value that they create for the customers. And guess what? I also always wanted to Venn diagram in a talk. So here it is. Right in the middle there. If the quality is right? If you work with great quality, if you work have great progress in your software development, and you create great value for your customers, right? Right in the middle, that's where developer joy is actually happening. And we became developers for a reason, because this is it's really great to be a developer these days. It's just like you create things, you just like have to fix some things that makes it less enjoyable. But please don't forget to have fun. As I said, development it's a great thing. You're able to create stuff. So thank you very much. Thanks for your attention. Have a great day, Focus.